It's 2006, Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift had us all wishing we lived in Tokyo. Young Sidney Crosby was tearing up the NHL, and let's just say a lot of us were obsessed with the WWE. I mean, we always were, but 2006 was just a fun year. We were spending our nights playing SVR06 like no tomorrow, watching Raw every Monday, Smackdown every Friday, jumping for joy when Saturday night's main event came back. The product was just hot. Ratings on 06 were the highest they had been since 2002. New faces that made their names at last year's Mania were going strong. Teddy Long was out here making the entire world go one-on-one with The Undertaker, and Vince was just on crack. And that year's WrestleMania is one of the most beloved WrestleManias of all time, a show that I'm sure many of you look back at and just can't help but smile. It was a night where the new generation fought the old generation, a night where the icon fought the boss, a crazed fan turned rival took on our hero, and so much more. So live from Chicago in an arena packed with fans ready to raise hell all night, portraits of WWE legends and present stars displayed all around the arena. It was WrestleMania 22, big time. WrestleMania 21 had the first ever Money in the Bank match, and it was amazing. Not only the match, but what happened with the winner after the match. So here we were, back at it again, the second ever Money in the Bank ladder match. Now the choice for talent in this match was definitely interesting. I mean, you had Finlay in a ladder match, but hey, that doesn't mean they didn't go out there and wild out. They didn't wait, they went straight into the destruction. Shelton for the second year in a row did an insane run on a leading ladder and just flew. But yo, the wildest part was seeing a 57-year-old Ric Flair get suplexed off the top of a ladder onto his back, and bro, Ric Flair was screaming like he was about to die, like he had been shot. Flair is actually a madman. In January of the same year, he had a TLC match on Raw. And now this, he will do anything for wrestling. Ric Flair, you're the GOAT, I love you. So Flair gets taken away to the back, and inside the ring they continue to break their bones for our entertainment, and RVD was just out here killing himself. Finlay was throwing ladders around the ring, and of course, eventually, who comes limping back down to the match? Ric Flair. That son of a gun is back, the crowd is wooing, and Finlay is just like, what? Flair goes back in there, fighting like it's Starrcade in the 80s or something. Flair somehow ends up on the top of the ladder one more time. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Don't go up there. Finlay comes and just hits him with the shillelagh, and boom, Ric Flair goes flying. GG. It was just a fun match. Matt Hardy did a leg drop off the top of a ladder. He did a side effect. Matt Hardy was doing everything he could to win, but at the end of the day, everybody was behind Rob Van Dam, and Rob Van Dam put on a show. He was flying high like he usually does, and even did a frog splash off the top of a ladder. Now, I wouldn't say it was a 5-star frog splash, but hey man, a 2-star frog splash off the top of a ladder is still pretty impressive. At the end, it was Shelton Benjamin, Matt Hardy, and RVD fighting for the briefcase, and these two idiots were on a different ladder, and all RVD had to do was just kick him off, and they went flying outside, and the crowd just erupted, and just like that, RVD was the new Mr. Money in the Bank. The fans loved RVD here all throughout the match. There was constant RVD chants. He was the best choice. He was the most over. There were so many signs everywhere about RVD, Mr. Money in the Bank. It was the perfect choice, and because of this, we got RVD cashing in at ECW One Night Stand, which was without a doubt an historic moment in wrestling history. Once again, Money in the Bank, 2 for 2. In the WrestleMania 21 video, I said Money in the Bank helped launch Edge into being a star. So 1 year later at WrestleMania, the rated R superstar was definitely a star. In January of 06, Edge finally cashed in his Money in the Bank after Cena survives a bloody elimination chamber. Cena was standing there looking like he was about to pass out any second, and out came Vince announcing Edge was going to cash in. Edge went out there, and if he wasn't already, after clapping Matt Hardy, he became the most hated man in the WWE. Edge destroyed a bloody John Cena, took his belt, and became the top heel in the company. Edge finally reached the top, and he took the ball and he ran with it. It was one of the best done angles of all time. Edge was unlike any heel we had seen in the WWE. He was so different. He was so awesome. He was the rated R superstar. Do I even need to remind anyone of this? Edge was on a mission to prove to everyone that he had arrived, that he was a star, that he was the next one up, that he was going to be the biggest heel in the company. He even had a TLC match with Flair on Raw for the title, which was insane, and it was such a good match. But not only that, that, it also did a huge rating. Edge proved that he was worth something, that he could be something. Edge was a breath of fresh air, and even though he only had the title for 3 weeks before losing it to Cena, he not only put the fans on notice, but the company, that he was legit. Edge lost the title at the Rumble because they already had their plans for the main event of WrestleMania, but luckily for Edge, he found himself in a match that many of us will never forget. So Edge was taking on Cena for the title on Raw, and this time the referee was Mick Foley. Edge lost the match and instantly blamed Foley, so after the match he took measures into his own hands. Low blow from Lita and then a spear, screaming in Foley's face, "You costed me the title, you costed me the title!" And the bullying didn't stop there. Edge wanted to embarrass Foley at Mania in a wrestling match. He challenged him, and Foley said, "I'm not gonna fight you in a wrestling match, but I will definitely fight you in a different type of match." And everyone knew what Foley wanted, a good old-fashioned hardcore match. And for weeks they destroyed each other. Edge gave Foley a concerto, giving him all the CTE possible. Edge threw Foley onto thumbtacks, but of course the sick freak loved it. Foley wanted his WrestleMania moment. He wanted his moment on the grandest stage of them all. Foley had his iconic moments on every other show imaginable, but he was missing that WrestleMania moment, and Edge just wanted to embarrass him and end his career. Foley was going to go back to the good old days, the days of death matches and thumbtacks. He was going to hell, and he was going to bring Edge with him. The hardcore legend versus the rated R superstar. Edge talked the talk, but could he walk the walk? Was Edge really about that life? We were about to find out. A simple storyline, something that we had seen with Triple H in 2000 and Randy Orton in 2004, and both times it was magic. And both times Mick helped make those individuals legit. Now it was Edge's turn. He was already legit, but he needed something special to bounce back from being a 3-week title holder. And yo, this was special. Edge came out ready for war with a baseball bat. Foley came out with nothing but showed no fear, and they had one of the most extreme matches in WWE history. Awesome is an understatement. Baseball bats, cookie sheets. Edge even hit a spear 2 minutes in. That hurt him more than anything because Foley, like a madman, wrapped himself in barbed wire. Lita even got involved and she went flying. Foley is God. But even Edge showed no fear. He was intense, and that's what made this work. It was just two wild men with something to prove. One wanted to prove that he was legit and that his title reign wasn't a fluke and that he is a main event player, and Foley just wanted to prove that he was worthy of a WrestleMania moment. Thumbtacks, barbed wire, chairs, bats, Mr. Socko made an appearance, and the fans were just in a frenzy. They pulled out all the stops. Edge could have easily speared him after like 13 minutes of the war and everyone would have been happy, but that wasn't enough. They wanted their moment. They wanted to do something special, something that we would remember, something that we would talk about in 2020, and that's why we're here. There was a table placed outside and Foley was on the apron, so he began spraying it with lighter fluid. Lita crept up and hit him with the bat. So now Lita sets the table on fire, and it's a moment that you've seen countless times. Something that to this day I cannot believe we saw in a WWE match. Edge spears Foley through the ropes into a flaming table, and as Joey Styles says it best, oh my god. Foley, you wanted your WrestleMania moment. Well, there you go. You just went through a flaming table. A moment us wrestling fans will never ever forget. Edge is looking like he's in shock, shaking like a madman. Foley is a dead man at this point, and the fans are just giving them a standing ovation, and Edge pins him. 1, 2, 3, and Edge survived. Like I said, it's one of those moments where it's hard to believe this actually happened, but it did. And just like how Triple H and Orton did, having this match with Foley only legitimized Edge even more. This gave him that badge of honor. Edge would go on to have a legendary 2006, even teaming with Foley, becoming the WWE champion once again, and continuing one of the greatest rivalries of the 2000s with John Cena. And Foley, well, Mrs. Foley's baby boy got his moment. Foley had done a lot for the business, putting his body on the line to elevate stars. He had various iconic moments, but every wrestler's dream is that to have the moment on the grandest stage of them all, have that moment at WrestleMania. And even though he had to go through a table on fire to do it, I don't think Foley would have done it any other way. He finally got his WrestleMania moment. In late 2005, Mickie James made her WWE debut, and from the moment we saw her, it was clear she was obsessed with Trish Stratus. You know the Eminem song Stan? Well, this was Mickie's version. She would come out dressed like Trish with a fake belt and everything, copy your entrance, hugging her non-stop, following her. She was obsessed, which I don't blame her. It's Trish Stratus. Trish was just going along with it, trying not to be rude, but Mickie just kept on getting crazier and crazier, and even kissing Trish at one point. So Trish confronts her and is like, yo, this is too much, this isn't normal, you're everywhere, and I don't want any more of it. This only turned Mickie into a straight psychopath. Her hero rejected her, so she was no longer the fan anymore. She became the rival, attacking Trish, screaming in her face, doing her own moves on her, taking her friend Ashley hostage. It was personal, it was different, it was unique, and it was a 6-month build for a women's match at WrestleMania. You didn't get that often back in the day, and it's my favorite women's WWE storyline of all time. Mickie James versus Trish Stratus at WrestleMania. What was so awesome about this match was the crowd was invested and they loved Mickie. They were cheering her like she was the face. They were so behind her and they hated Trish. They wanted to see the Psycho Stan become the champion, and honestly, who didn't? Mickie played her role so well. She was an amazing actor when it came down to it, that even now when I watch this, I'm like, are we sure that she's not crazy? And Trish did her thing too and put on a hell of a match. It was fast paced, it was back and forth, and it ended with Mickie knocking the hell out of Trish Stratus and becoming the women's champion. Of course, after she grabbed her down there and made a gesture that ended up being edited out, but it was awesome anyway. A great match with an amazing story. Speaking of amazing stories, originally planned for this WrestleMania was Eddie Guerrero versus Shawn Michaels in a match that without a doubt would have been an all-time classic. Sadly, Eddie passed away in November, but here's a little information on what those plans were, according to Court Bauer, who was a WWE writer at that time. It was Bruce Pritchard who pitched the idea of putting Eddie Guerrero at WrestleMania against Shawn Michaels and doing the parallels of their career, being the heartthrob in Mexico and this Mercurial figure south of the border, and the American version being HBK. They had never really worked, and you would have such a great dynamic between the two with heel Eddie versus Shawn. That would be your tear that house down high quality match at WrestleMania 22 in Chicago. Vince was like, god damn, that's really appealing. We could parallel their careers. What kind of footage of Eddie do we have outside of WCW? We could really do some impressive packages. It would have been an amazing match and would have been something special that to this day we still would have talked about. But sadly it didn't happen. But man, imagine if it did. But luckily for us, we still got an amazing story, I think. Yeah, polarizing is a better word actually. You either loved it or you hated it. Shawn Michaels versus Mr. McMahon at WrestleMania. Last year, Shawn Michaels had a wrestling classic with Kurt Angle. This year, he was about to wrestle a 6-year-old man in a street fight. Get yourself a man who can do both, ladies. I have an entire video on the McMahon and Shawn feud, so check that out for laughs and more details. But basically, you know how Vince every few years comes back on TV and goes on his power trips, bring back that infamous club and start abusing his power, you know, his usual midlife crisis? Well, he was back on that BS again in 2006, firing Jim Ross, firing Eric Bischoff, hell, even firing us the fans. It was just Vince being Vince. So Shawn stood up to him, and that caused Vince to bring in Shane, and they did everything they could to make Shawn's life a living hell, embarrassing him every single week on Raw. And here we were, Vince versus Shawn at WrestleMania, no holds barred. And once again, Vince, oh man, Vince did his thing, which means he went out there all jacked up and oiled up and just sports entertained like only Vince can. Shawn Michaels probably had the time of his life beating up his boss. And this was just so much fun, like every other Vince McMahon WrestleMania match, minus the Bret Hart one. Vince at this point was so jacked that Muscle and Fitness put him on the cover. So he brought it ringside to show off, and as everyone expected, Shawn put him through it. It was an overbooked, good old-fashioned Vince at WrestleMania street fight. Spirit Squad came in and HBK sent them flying. Vince tried to do a sweet chin music on Shawn. That didn't work out. You had Shane come in with a kendo stick to avenge his father. Sadly, that just resulted in Shane's face ending up in Vince's behind. Oh, wrestling. 19 minutes of amazing sports entertainment that ended up with Shawn Michaels on top of, I swear to God, one of the tallest ladders I've ever seen in my life. Vince laying on a table with a trash can on his head. HBK is standing there on top of the ladder, does the crotch chop, cause shout out DX, and boom, flying elbow onto Vince through the table. Vince is a total write-off. He's done. Doctors rush to rescue the owner of the company just for Shawn to push him away, and bang, sweet chin music. I love it. I love seeing Vince get clapped. Vince is entertainment at its finest. He will put his body on the line. He will embarrass himself and his family, all for our entertainment and money. You gotta love it. 2006 Vince was on one. After this, God got involved. He even went to church to trash talk God. 06 Vince was just on another level. And you just love to see him get beat up by Shawn Michaels. So my question to you is, out of the 3 Vince street fights out of the Holy Trinity, which one is your absolute favorite? Let me know below. The next match was for the World Heavyweight Championship. Rey Mysterio won the 06 Rumble after entering number 2 and lasting for 62 minutes. He was doing it for Eddie, and he was going to go on to WrestleMania and win the title for his late friend. However, tables turned when him and Randy had a match in No Way Out where the winner would be the true number 1 contender for the title. Leading up, Randy cut the infamous "Eddie is in hell" promo, and Rey actually lost the match and was no longer going to be in a title match at Mania until Teddy Long did him a solid and made it a triple threat. So WrestleMania 22, Rey versus Randy versus Kurt for the world title. This was going to be awesome because Randy, after WrestleMania 21, he really found his groove. He had an epic year-long feud with Taker, came clutch at Survivor Series for Smackdown. He was on a roll, and Kurt Angle is Kurt Angle. He was the wrestling machine at this point. After WrestleMania 21, he became a straight up savage, and Rey Mysterio was doing this to honor Eddie Guerrero, which some fans hated and some loved it. A lot of fans really wanted to see Kurt Angle versus The Undertaker at WrestleMania. It got teased at the end of the Rumble, they had a classic at No Way Out, but now Taker was against Mark Henry in a match that should have been on Smackdown, not WrestleMania, and we were getting a triple threat instead with the main focus of Rey Mysterio doing it for Eddie Guerrero. A lot of people just felt it was too forced. Regardless, you had a lot of talent in that ring, and as kids we loved Rey Mysterio, so we were down to see him become champion, and it's a damn shame that this match, the world title match at WrestleMania, only got 9 minutes. Granted, those 9 minutes, they packed everything they could have possibly done, but it's just sad because this could have been up there for one of the best triple threats ever. For those 9 minutes, it was an amazing thrill ride. They never stopped and they had the pedal to the metal, but then it just ended. It was still a good match, but it's just one of those what ifs. Rey Mysterio won the title and you could see how much it meant to him. It was a special moment for sure. Eddie's family came out and embraced him, and as a kid, I was so happy for Rey. This was a man who we saw go from Cruiserweight champion to world champion at WrestleMania. It was something we never thought we would see. I could see why older fans didn't like it, but us kids, we loved it. Rey was the little man. He was the embodiment of, wow, you don't have to be a giant and jacked to make an impact. He had an awesome moveset, he had the attire, he was flashy, it was bright. Growing up, every kid loved Rey Mysterio. Like, I can't trust someone who didn't grow up liking Rey Mysterio at one point in their life. He might not have been your number 1, but you had to have been a fan. His reign after this was so poorly booked, but on this night, he had made it. Granted, you could say he only won the title because Eddie died, but he still put in work wrestling all over the world for more than a decade. He still became a household name, became one of the most loved superstars ever, and at 5'6", 170 pounds, he overcame the odds and he broke through barriers that a lot of people never expected anyone to ever break through, but he did it. So shout out to Rey Mysterio. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but for us, we were just so happy for him. Then there was the main event, which was all about new school versus old school. The main event for this always fascinated me. It was John Cena versus Triple H. Last year at Mania, Cena was one of the most beloved wrestlers on the entire card. Fans were jumping for joy when he finally won the WWE Championship. And on the other hand, fans were so happy to see Triple H's reign of terror finally over. They were jumping for joy because he lost. After 3 years, the dynasty was done. Fast forward a year, Cena versus Triple H at WrestleMania. Triple H comes out with the King of Kings entrance. John Cena comes out representing Chicago gangsters of the past, featuring a CM Punk cameo. So Cena and Triple H are face to face in the ring, and the crowd is absolutely buzzing, and they're cheering for Triple H and booing John Cena. How the tables have turned. The same man who they hated for years for hogging the title on the spotlight was now getting cheered by the same fans who called him boring, and the kid who last year everyone loved and everyone was so happy for was now getting booed. They wanted him in this position, he made it, and now he's getting booed. One day they love you, next day they don't. But regardless, it was electric, it was surreal. Yes, Cena had been booed leading up to Mania a few times, but nothing like this. This was a rejection. This was a slap in the face. This is when you slide into the DMs and you don't even get scene bombed. They just don't even open the message. It was awesome. The main event of WrestleMania, whether the fans are cheering or they're booing, at least they were reacting. And they reacted to every blow, every punch, every hold. John Cena over the course of the year became Superman. He never lost, always overcame the odds, so the older fans resented him. He moved away from being the rapper, now he was all about hustle, loyalty, respect. Who the hell did he become? Whereas Triple H represented the past. It was a clash of two different generations. It's just crazy to think how much can change in a year. Triple H and Cena had a great match. It was a simple story of the veteran with the experience controlling Cena, and the fans loved it because Triple H played up to the crowd whenever he could. He knew exactly what to do to get reactions, to get the crowd even more rowdy and behind him, and eventually once it picked up, it became a fantastic match. Triple H kicked out the FU, which at that point wasn't common. They traded finishers, Cena went up to the top and missed, and also fans just went crazy when Triple H cut off his 5 moves of doom. They wanted to see Triple H win so bad, they would have done anything. Triple H hit his crotch chop to all but guarantee that DX was coming back. After 21 minutes of them having a great match and had the fans invested the entire time, John Cena made Triple H tap out, and the fans booed him so heavily, but Cena stood tall and he took it all in. After losing to Batista the year before and now to Cena, the Triple H era was officially over. Yes, he would be champion after this, but he was never the main focus. He was never the main guy. And John Cena in 2006 was just so hated by older fans. This was before it was cool to boo Cena. This was when it was legit hatred. At this point, if you were booing Cena, you actually hated him. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter. Like I said, if they cheered or they booed, they reacted. They still watched the shows, they still ordered the pay-per-view, and business was still strong. John Cena overcame the odds once again, but that just meant when he was finally going to lose, it was going to be something special, and it definitely was. So Cena's just standing there with the boos raining down on him. He's closing out Mania, he's holding the title, and the fans are just letting him have it. But this was the best thing that could ever happen to him. This was character building. He would become one of the most polarizing wrestlers of all time. Some hated him, some loved him, but situations like this and the booing and everything, that's what made Cena Cena. '06 was just a wild time. You had Cena getting booed only a year into his reign, you had Vince and God having beef, you had Mick Foley and Edge going through flaming tables, Mickie James was a psycho. But man, I love this WrestleMania. It doesn't have that one amazing 5-star classic, it doesn't have that HBK or Angle or whatever, but this time period was just something else. Like I said in the intro, 2006 for us, WWE was just booming, and this is the Mania of that time period. You had so many storylines we were invested in. Edge, Foley, HBK, Vince, can Rey pull it off? John Cena, is he gonna beat the King of Kings? We would tune in every week to see what would happen, and something wild was always happening. TLC matches on Raw, Battle Royales for the world title, Vince on crack, Foley rolling around in thumbtacks, and just so much more. It was just a fun time, and this Mania captured the time period perfectly. Is it the best Mania ever? No. Is 2006 the best year in the history of wrestling? No. But when you look at this card, when you look at the talent, the matchups, and the build-ups, there's no way you can tell me that the product just wasn't hot, and that every week you weren't excited to see what the hell was going to happen next. And then on this night, WrestleMania 22, we got one amazing show.